Hello, I'm Dave Haddock, lead writer over here at CIG, and welcome to another episode of Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy, the show where we talk about stuff, specifically galaxy stuff. More specifically, the Star Citizen galaxy, to give you not only a look at the system itself, but some of the thinking behind some of the choices that we have made. So today we're going to do something a little special. Last time I stumbled my way through one of these, we did a breakdown of the Vandal-controlled Orion system. So I thought it'd be fun to stick with another alien system. As you may have seen from the language video that we released a few months ago, we've been working to develop the Xian language with Britton, our xenolinguistic specialist. And so anyway, our conversations with him has started to lead to some interesting discussions about various aspects of the Xian culture, so he can build a language to make sense of it, because you have to, do they have a word for blank? That type of stuff. And then in answering that, you end up asking yourself deeper questions. So it's led to some really interesting and fascinating things. So since I've been delving into a lot of the pits of Xian lore, if you will, it is fresh on the mind. So this week, we are going to head to the Rihlah system. Now, before we get started, it's also important to note that as the languages started to come together, part of what Britton has been doing in his work has been going through the previously established systems and planets and stuff and sort of modifying them to conform them to the language. Because obviously, a lot of these systems and planets and stuff were made or conceived and named years ago. So at the time, we had no idea, specifically I had no idea, what the language was going to ultimately sound like. So while at the time, the goal was to not make them sound ridiculous, now that we have the framework of a language, we now can sort of rename them with more authority and make them consistent with the language. And he's done what he can to try and keep them somewhat similar, so we're not kind of completely, salting the earth type thing. But anyway, so we're actually going to eventually update the star map to reflect these new names. So be sure to check back in, and we'll let you know when they've changed. So with that, we shall. I think I've caveated enough. We will drop into the star map. So again, we'll start on Earth here, and now Sol system, of course. Okay, so zooming out from Sol. All right, I'm going to go into 2D mode because it's very easy to get turned around. So coming from Earth. Over here, I always kind of use it as the sort of the Eastern systems just to kind of justify it in my own head, even though obviously there's no, regimented geography in that regard. But over here is where you have the Xian systems, which are all these green bad boys right there, there. So the system that we are talking about today is Rihlah system right here. So you can see basically it is situated right on the edge of the Periline. So the Periline, which was this sort of very famous demilitarized zone that existed between, or no man's land, I'm not sure if demilitarized zone is accurate, but we'll run with it, between human space and Xian space, which was sort of like, it was a very dangerous thing and area. And, no one lived there because there was, at any moment, they were afraid that a war would basically break out. So in the wake of the sort of the Messer despots getting tossed out, one of the first things that the humans did is a sort of a, hey, we're really sorry about that whole, fascist dictator thing, and threat of war was to dismantle the Periline, and they basically divided the systems between the Xian and the humans. So the blue ones here, Tohil, Oya, Gurzel, Horus, are all the human ones, and then Pallas, Hader, Indra are the ones that were given to the Xian. All of which, in case you've noticed, are named after gods of war. So these are the human sort of military designations of them. So anyway, so Rihlah, situated right here, is connected to not one, but two of them. So a pretty, a dangerous place to be if you're worried that the humans are going to decide to get really ambitious and rambunctious and try to invade you. So sort of unsurprisingly, Rihlah was a military system. So they basically kind of shored up their defenses there and turned into a military system. So anyway, dropping into it, the system itself, what is the Rihlah system? Okay, so the system itself, as you can see here, is basically 6 planets. So 2 of which are inhabited, and I'll trust you all, you can kind of pick through here on your own time if you'd like to get to sort of nitty-gritty specific stuff, but just to give you kind of a quick rundown, Rihlah 1, Rihlah 2 here, and Rihlah 3, by category, you have a protoplanet, a puffy planet, and a rocky planet, which sounds like a band name. And then out here, you've got Rihlah 6, which is sort of this lonely dwarf planet that's just kind of out on the rid. So as far as the inhabited ones, you have 2. There is Rihlah 4, which is known as Shoreview, had been designated as a military base. So specifically, actually to backtrack a little bit, Xian are very notorious for what we call geo-planning. So they basically will allocate planets for single-use kind of function. So they'll have production planets, and they'll have ag worlds, and they'll have habitation planets and stuff like that. So this is basically was just a military planet. So it was designed and constructed to house, train, and hold troops, basically. So in the advent of a human-Xian war, they could basically launch relatively quickly and would be the sort of first line of defense against the humans. But with the dissolution of the Peri line, now it's not as necessary to have a sort of standing military force this close to the border. So the Xian have started turning it into an industrial world. So basically opening the doorway for a lot of Xian corporations to move in and set up factories. The other planet, habited planet that is Rihlah 5, called Z, is a habitation planet. So its primary function is to provide residences. So it's just a populated world. So general backstory for the whole system, as far as how we discovered it, it was actually discovered by nav explorer Marie Santee, who also discovered the Horus system over here. And it was her discovery of Rihlah in 2542 that caused the government to move into Horus and basically declare it a security risk and seal it to non-military personnel, which sent her on a very interesting kind of unique journey. If you're interested in that story, we'll post a link. There's a galactic guide about the Horus system that goes into it, and we'll post it here-ish somewhere. So to get back into it, to ask the question, what is the Rihlah system? So you've heard the astronomical data, 6 planets, and a bit of the flavors about each of the planets and stuff like that. But one of the things that we like to talk about in Loremakers is sort of what is the character of the system? So what makes it unique in the Star Citizen universe? And we're also going to try something a little different here with this as well. We're going to show basically some of the early concepts that were done a few years ago that were done for some of these planets. And just to, again, throw another caveat out there, like these are pretty old, so elements of these are probably going to change, but they're really pretty and give you kind of a sort of a sense of what the initial early thinking of it is. So we'll show off one of these. So the first one here, one of the things you'll notice with both of these actually is there's a lot of verticality. While the actual architectural styles might differ or be changed completely or something like that, I think that the element of verticality has always been something that's been tied very strongly with the Xian. You see it in the Cartual, and in one of these pictures you see these sort of hanging vertical like ship dock things. I think that's the Volper. I'm not sure what ship that is. I really don't remember. I think it's the Volper. I don't know what's happening with it. Anyway, I don't know if it's in there. Anyway, so, but you can see them kind of flying here and suspended here. But like that's one of the things that has always kind of stuck with the Xian, was this element of like verticality. And we were talking earlier today actually about sort of what was the sort of origin of that. So it was a kind of an interesting discussion, and like I said, we'll kind of start teasing out some of the resolutions of these conversations in the near future. But yeah, so I have a feeling that that's going to be one of the things that kind of sticks with whatever the newer incarnations of these concepts are going to be. But so anyway, so we'll talk a little bit about Shoreview. So the landing zone on Shoreview is called Yati, which is sort of a business-oriented. Like it's supposed to be sort of like a business park. Was kind of the idea, and it was designed to be sort of a place for humans to come to who are interested in Xian products. So MISC has offices here, for example, APOA too, and I thought it'd be kind of fun too to also sort of talk about how the Xian society handles corporations. We sort of mentioned it briefly in the Jump Point portfolio article we did for APOA. So the Xian have a very different approach to business than humans do. If you take a look at that article, one of the things that we talked about, there's a sort of bureaucratic branch of the government that the emperor is in charge of that handles sort of the bureaucracy as well as the military. So they're all kind of unified in this sort of one organization. But what they do is basically the government assigns specific contracts to single companies to be responsible for a single manufacturing object or item or something. So for example, APOA is responsible for, and the only ones legally allowed to construct, a light craft in the Xian Empire. So the Cartual is basically no one else, you would not have sort of a competing scout type ship like APOA are the ones. They have been sort of deemed the ones to be able to build this stuff. So it was basically a way for the corporations to feel very different than humans, but also kind of to dip in the same ponds but feel different enough that if they feel like sort of a unique society. But that isn't to say, of course, that the companies are responsible for the entire construction of them. So APOA could basically subcontract out to smaller companies to try and fulfill the sort of component needs that they need in order to deliver the ship and stuff like that. And the end result being that if you are the company that's been given these sort of lucrative contracts, then you're getting government aid and support, which is something that obviously bolsters your company's power and influence and stuff like that. So that's sort of a little bit about the Xian business. So now, to flip the script, we will head over to Xi to talk about their landing zone. So they actually have a landing zone called Korea, which is much more of a sort of a trading post crossroads type thing. And basically it's mostly known because it's a community haven for UEE expatriates and political refugees who had basically built lives away from the reach of the messers. So they came out here, kind of like what we had talked about before with Levski. In the height of the messer era, basically there were humans who were just like, I'm done, I'm out. I cannot be a part of this, and I don't want to live under this sort of tyranny. And so they just basically fled. And interestingly enough, the Xian would take some in. So there was, on this planet was basically a little kind of enclave of these political refugees. Now, one of the things that's interesting to sort of think about with this is how indicative of the human Xian relationship this sort of situation is. I mean, if you look at it sort of on a thing, it's like, it seems really great, like, oh, they have this sort of business thing where humans can come to set up businesses and trade and stuff like that. And then they have this other planet in the system where humans, if they want to live out here, they can come live. But the important thing is, again, to go back to the star map, is look at where it's situated. It's like barely within the Xian Empire. So in a nutshell, sort of what they've done is they've eliminated the need for humans to expand inside their territory. So the idea was that basically they would say like, oh, why would you want to live further in? We have this awesome planet here. Or, no, you don't need to set up a planet in Kabari. Like, we have a place in Rihlah that's perfect. Why not just set up there? So it's sort of a really savvy approach on their part to kind of, because again, they've a lot of the Xian, because they live much longer, were around for the Messers, so they remember how bad humans could be. So they're like, that's great, you guys, that's awesome, you want to live over here. So why don't you just live right there, so we can kind of keep an eye on you, and we can, kind of stem your spread into our territory. So it was always one of those things that was very fun about kind of how they approached it. It seemed really nice, but it was a little, you could argue that it was a little duplicitous. Anyway, so we've mentioned this sort of expatriate community that's set up in the Xian territory in the past, but this actually seemed like a fun opportunity to talk about another aspect of their sort of integration. As I just mentioned, humanity, we've always said that the Xian have kind of kept humanity at a distance, stuff like that, and they tend to be very stoic and reserved, and they don't show emotion because that seems like a sort of youthful thing, so they tend to be very controlled and very, and it feels like that sort of implies that the Xian are sort of resilient to human influence, whereas we're kind of enamored with them. So there's again, expatriates moving out here and stuff like that. But one of the things that we've been sort of kicking around is that that's not as commonplace as you might think, that there are actually elements among the young in the Xian Empire that are sort of attracted to our culture, that have started to reject this sort of very rigid, heavily organized, compartmentalized element of Xian culture, and have started to embrace some of the things that humanity does. So there's sort of a kind of a give and take, and within the Xian, they might be like, it could be scandalous if you want to go Victorian about it, like that they would want to do this, but again, there's that sort of give and take between the two. So the two cultures are affecting each other and stuff. Now the exact levels of which that we're still sort of working out right now. As I said in the beginning, we've been really cranking away on a lot of these history and society docs, and are sort of getting them through the various stages of approval. So if you're hungry for more Xian lore, it's definitely coming. So just hold tight. But that's pretty much it. That's sort of Rihlah in a nutshell. So that will do it for this episode of Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy. As always, you should check out the fantastic star map, which I'm sure we'll have another link for in the link area. And if you want to know more about the systems and planets in the Star Citizen universe, this is a great sort of resource to get started and kind of start to delve into it. Also, on another note, you should definitely check out the new Spectrum platform if you haven't already. It's a really kind of cool, fun way to chat with backers and devs and just kind of stay connected and stuff. But yeah, so again, finally, thank you to the subscribers who keep us producing shows like this, and Bug Smashers, ATV, Citizens of the Stars, and stuff like that. And of course, a big thank you to all the backers who have contributed to this game with their time, energy, and passion and stuff like that, and are really making it sort of this incredible thing that we're building. But yeah, I'll see you next time. My name's Dave Haddock, and I will see you in the verse.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.